Hi, and welcome to Be Above Leadership's podcast. The world needs our weirdness. Lively and unscripted conversations for anyone who has ever felt they were a little bit different. I'm Ursula Pottinga and one of the founding partners of Be Above.
And I'm Betz, the other founding partner. Join us as we share our own weirdness and how this has shaped how we see the world. We'll be exploring coaching, neuroscience, consciousness, and anything else that takes our fancy.
Well, hello, Anne. How are you?
Hi, Ursula. I'm well. I'm excited for this conversation.
Yes.
What are we talking about in terms of what makes us weird? What are we talking about today?
Well, I thought, what really, I think what makes us really weird is how we run our business and how we do our partnership. Because what I
It is a little weird, I
It is
have
a
to
little
say.
weird, right? Now, in order to get a little bit of context for the listener, is we met like 24 years ago and have had a ongoing partnership in various ways that then really started to solidify itself, and then we created a business around it, and then for the last 17, 18, 20 years we've been running this business together. And what I know, sort of from the outside world, from the real business,
What we should be doing if we weren't so weird.
That's so weird. And so maybe listeners, you are just as weird as we are. So we give you that.
Welcome to the weird
Welcome
world.
to the weird group. Anyway, what I'm hearing often, and actually a little bit too often, it's like, well, what's your long-term vision? Where's your business plan? Do you have a budget? And I'm always sort of like, in that moment, I always feel a little bad, because the answer to this question is no, we don't have a long-term vision. No, we don't have an agreement in writing. And no, we've never had a lawyer that needs to, do all the I's and the T's crossed. We don't.
No, we really, it's really interesting because it's not the advice. It's not even necessarily the advice I would give someone, but we
No.
have we have we have a we have developed over the 24 years that we've known each other deep, deep trust, deep intertwined roots with each other. We have guiding principles. We know what we're about in the world, and we're very aligned there. And anything else, like, can we take our full draw each month or more, or a bonus or whatever it is, we negotiate.
Yeah. Well, and it's not even, I mean, it's not even a negotiation. It's like, I say to you, we've got a little bit of extra money. How would you feel about an extra so and so? And you go, oh, yay.
Sounds good.
Right.
Right.
Or you
Right.
come to me and say, could I have a little bit more? And I say to you, let's wait. I need to pay a few bills. Let's wait. So there is this openness of conversation, and it
Yeah.
goes back to
Yeah.
alignment. Our values are just aligned.
Yeah, and it's negotiation sounds like it's like, like that.
Yeah,
It's
right.
really not. It's more like sometimes I might say, oh, let's do this. And there's a context that it might be money, or it might be what we're planning. And there's a context I don't know about that Ursula knows about, or vice versa. Like I have a context. And so it's more just about communication. And one of the things I tell people about our relationship and our deep friendship and connection is that if there is something that Ursula doesn't know about me, it's that I haven't had time to tell her, or I didn't remember to tell her, because man, this woman knows everything about me. And none of this, by the way, this is more of a, I want to kind of contextualize this by saying, we're not saying this is how anybody else should do business.
Oh God, no, this is not our advice. No,
This is not our advice. We're sharing with you how we have evolved and grown together. Like this relationship has honed me and polished me and grown me. And we've had times where we were both a little triggered about something. We didn't speak for a couple of weeks until we found our way to come back to a productive conversation. But that's old history. That's not true now. And it hasn't probably been true for the last 10 years, because we've grown in trust and alignment in that time. And that makes working together a continual joy.
Yes,
Continual joy.
and really seamless. We don't need to have a meeting after the meeting after the meeting after the meeting. It's interesting as you were talking about, like 10 years ago when we sort of go silent, the minute you said that, I could feel it in my stomach. It's like that was so painful. It's so painful. I haven't
Yeah,
heard from you. What we in some form either text or do something almost every day.
almost every day,
Just
like
an
sister, like
emoji.
like good sisters, or whatever. But we grew that together, and we do hear often, like from our students and from other people, where's my Ursula? Where's my Anne? I want one. And what we have to say is, man, we grew each other.
Yes.
We and I think the thing that helped us the most is we've been working with our model of the 7 levels of effectiveness for not the whole time, but we've been working in some kind of container of consciousness for almost the whole time that we've been together. And that he has by having a shared value of, we can't teach something that we don't do, that has kept us walking the talk and walking the talk with each other. And when
Yes.
I can't walk the talk with Ursula, or in the past, when that was, when I was in our language, below the line, feeling resentful, feeling angry, whatever, what our strategy was often was we sat with it until we could communicate in a way where we could take responsibility for our part in it. And if I couldn't do that, I would actually go quiet. I'm not sure this is the best advice. That's just, so we didn't do a lot of ripping and damage that had to be fixed.
Well,
Ursula,
and
what's your
to
take on that?
no, absolutely. This roadmap of our 7 levels of looking at, hopelessness, fear, frustration, then courage, engagement, innovation, and synchronicity. That roadmap is such a good check-in. It still is a good check-in for me almost every day, is especially when I'm feeling off. It's
Yeah.
like, I text you only just like a couple of days ago saying, I'm in hopelessness. Well, hopelessness is a rare state for me. Yeah, right.
Right.
I mean, when is the last time you heard me say I'm hopeless? I mean, it hardly ever happens.
Hardly ever, hardly ever.
But because of that roadmap, I could actually say where I was
Yeah.
rather than, doing this whole long story. I could just share, this is my energy today. I'm in hopelessness. And that
Yeah.
you the idea, or this is the sort of that's the radio signal. And so that roadmap has been absolutely invaluable over the last 18 whatever years, because to your point, I can now look at the roadmap and go, okay, let's say you do something and I go, I'm frustrated. Now I can look at the roadmap and go, I'm in frustration, but that level means that my ego is involved and I'm attached to something and I want to be right.
Yeah.
And now
Yeah.
I can say, oh, I want to be right about this. Well, that's probably not a good idea. So what do I need to bring to the partnership that is an awareness that, yes, maybe you didn't say it in quite the way that it landed, but it's also my deal. Why did it not land?
Yeah. And, it's really interesting. You're pointing to something I think that's so important with the 7 levels, which is we call them the 7 levels of effectiveness. And being able to remind myself when I'm in frustration, for example, like I could be here, it's not going to be effective in this relationship with this woman who I love and adore. And I always love and adore, even when I'm feeling, for whatever reason, miscommunication, or somebody wrote an email, me or whoever, or you, that was too quick, and
Yeah.
got into my human side, however, but to remind myself that, like, I could, blast back or whatever, but it's not effective. and I want to be effective. And so maybe I need to sit for a while until I can figure out what's going on, why I got triggered, or what I need.
Absolutely. And this is another sort of interesting point in terms of, weirdness and how you run the business. The people that I coach that have business partners or team members or whatever.
A lot of drama usually.
Oh, yeah. No, not only that, but then it's like, I need to have this hard conversation. And I'm always going like, really, you do? Because I try and stay away from these hard
I
conversations.
know this is a little weird, especially in our field in human
Yeah.
development. It's all about, difficult conversations. There's whole books written about it, whole
Yeah.
trainings about it.
And I'm going like, no, I'm not having that. I'm going to send a prayer to the angels of saying, let's shift the energy and see what happens.
Right. And this is something I really learned when I was unfortunately involved with a narcissist, is
Mm.
that things that work with healthy people don't work with toxic people. So
Mhm.
the example that I give is that if I go to Ursula and I say, and we're off, and again, what's interesting is that this is less and less and less because of the work we've done, not
Yeah.
because of anything else, because we have come to more and more alignment over the years. But looking back, if I come and we're off, and I come and I say, we're off, and here's what I did. Here's what I need to be responsible for. I was not thoughtful in that email. I did this. I can 10 out of 10 times, 10 out of 10, Ursula will come back to me and go, yes, and here's what I did.
Absolutely.
Now, that works with healthy people. It does not work with toxic people, because if I go to the narcissist, if I would go to the narcissist, he'd be like, yeah, you did that.
Yeah,
And
yeah, it's
I'll
all
tell
your
you
fault.
6 other things. So, that's part of the learning. But that's the having a partner who's on the same path of consciousness. I can guarantee that if I own my part, she'll own her part. If there is one to own, maybe there isn't. Maybe it was all me. And then we talk about that. That's fine too. Um, so
Yeah,
I want to throw something else in here if that's okay.
yeah.
So we started out by saying one of the other things that's weird. So what's a little weird is our relationship. The other thing that is weird is that we do not do a vision every year. We do not have a business plan. We only have a very loose mental budget that doesn't really show up on a spreadsheet.
No,
We have a general sense of like what we're doing. It's
this
not like
is
we don't have anything. We have people that work for us. We kind of have a sense of that, but it's more of a, you
in
know,
the background.
it's known, but we don't have it on a spreadsheet. So like, what about that?
Um, Before I answer that, I want to tell you that, just for the listeners to know, my husband actually is our tax
Thank goodness. Yes,
spreadsheet person. He
yes,
keeps track of the money.
yes. We do keep track of our money. We don't just,
No, we're not
we
that
have that. Yeah.
irresponsible. We actually do know where things are, but not like business plan and budget, and this is how much we need to spend, and that's not something what we do. But I wanted to say this is actually drives my husband nuts because he will, at the end of the year, he will say, well, what are your projections for next year? That's business speak, and he's been in corporate, for
He's
45
brilliant. He's
years,
been a
brilliant,
high level
high
VP.
level. I mean,
He's brilliant.
he knows a lot more about business than I will ever know or want to know. In any case, it drives him nuts because he says, what's your projection for next year? And I always look at him and say, my projection is that we will do the best we can at any given moment in time. We will not sit on our lazy butts. We will
So we
continue.
work hard.
We work hard. We will go along the same path of excitement and fun and integration, and we will do the best we can. That's my projection. And what comes in as money, I'm sorry, I have no idea.
Because and I think part of it is, as you say that, and I can see where this would drive him crazy, because we do pay our taxes every year, and there's,
Yes, we do.
we have to pay,
Thanks to him. Thanks to him, because I
thanks
don't
to
do
him, we do
that.
that. But, I think about, it's not our definition of success.
Yes, good
Or it's
point.
certainly not the only definition of success. We like flow, we like abundance. We
Fun.
I think that's fun. But, if we really look at what is fulfilling? What is fulfilling are the amazing, funny, brilliant students we have in our classes and the opportunities that we get to go speak for free to ICF chapters and people we can, see their eyes light up and that I can say to Ursula, what if we did this kind of program? What if we did a spiritual coaching program? Wouldn't that be fun? And we're not thinking that would be strategic because there's this need in the market. We're just thinking we want to,
Yeah.
and that would be fun.
Yeah.
And who can we get to come and play with us? I think that's always been the question. Who can we get to come and play with us to do this because it's just so freaking cool?
Yeah. And, here's also the other thing for the listeners to know, we've been in business together in some form or another, and it's definitely evolved over the last, especially over the last 15 years. I mean, we've become so sophisticated, in terms of website and podcast and LinkedIn and all of that. I mean, we've really become sophisticated. And it's also true to say that we had struggles, also financial struggles, where we were willing to swallow the cost just to stay in the game, where
Yeah. Yeah, we made a strategic decision at one point that we wouldn't cancel programs. And for
yeah,
the most, even if it were like 3 people,
yeah,
and for the most part, we've held to that. We've got a little more runway at this point, but because we wanted to stay in the game. And when you say all of this, I remember at one point, I think we were reviewing the various projects that we have that now, we have some help with, and we have some folks that work for us part-time and things, and some leaders that lead for us and all of this. And, lots of collateral and PowerPoints and handouts and handbooks and lots of stuff.
yeah,
And I remember thinking, if somebody would have told me 20 years ago that I was going to need all of this stuff in order to do this job, I would have run screaming from the room because we've always done it as sort of a just in time,
yeah,
like even to the point with a new program that we were creating the timelines on the PowerPoints the week before and that doesn't work for everyone. And it's, again, not a recommendation that works for us because we also tend to think very similarly. So nobody's freaking out about what to predict. And it's okay to do it in kind of a just in time way.
yeah.
Um, rather than saying I've got everything nailed down and we know exactly what we're doing and everything is perfect before we do anything. I don't think we would do anything if we had to do it that way. And that's our personalities. Not everyone's like that. That's a little weird about us.
Yeah. However, I want to say that I certainly what I see from my clients that are, entrepreneurs, business owners, and coaches with businesses is that the desire to have it all lined up and have it be perfect often stops people
Yeah,
from doing anything.
doing anything.
And to your
Exactly.
point, like even now, if somebody asked me the other day, what's your 5-year vision? And I looked at them and I said, do you know how old I am? I might not be alive in 5 years.
Oh,
So
come on. Stop that.
why
No.
would I concern myself with what's going to happening 5 years from now? I'd be happy to know what's happening in the next 6 months.
Well, I wanted to speak to that a little bit. I mean, you're, long and blessed life and all of that for both of us, we hope, we intend. But I think the thing about the vision, and one of the things that is a little weird about us is I'm just gonna, say it in the way that it's coming to me, is that I don't know where the world is going to be in 5 years. And I don't know more importantly, I don't know who I am going to be.
Absolutely.
I have experienced myself, particularly over the last 25 years since I've, been partners with this beautiful woman, as a such an evolving bundle of energy
Yes.
with with many things that have surprised. Neuroscience was never part of our vision. It wasn't a strategy.
No.
It was a problem. This idea of neuroscience was almost like you could imagine this little brain that just kept going like this to me. And shut up. I can't do that. I'm not smart enough to do that, until I surrendered and dragged her with me. But it wasn't that we looked into the space and said, oh, strategically, coaches and organizations are going to want to learn about neuroscience. We fell in love. We fell in love with it. We got fascinated by it. That was completely unpredictable. It started in about
Yeah,
2011.
you're
And
right.
by 2012, we were teaching coaches how to bring neuroscience into their practices because we fell in love with it, not because we had any strategy or any vision. We had no idea what we were doing.
No, no, I mean such a good example. And also I have to say we do get together, usually at some point in a year, and out of fun again create a vision board. But it's not because we should and we have to, and it's sort of some strategic thing. It's just like, oh, let's do some art, let's do a collage. Well, why not, look
Like
into
a
the
vision
space?
board.
Let's do a
And
vision.
so I remember, I want to tell a little story. So you were living in Florida. I was living in Costa Rica, and I came to visit you, and we were doing some work together, and we did a vision board. And we were just doing what grabbed us. We are doing it very intuitively. And if you haven't thought of that word so far, that is probably the biggest thing that drives us, is our intuition.
Yes.
We go by intuition much more than strategy. So intuitively, we were putting things on this vision board, and we had a globe. I remember this so clearly. We had a globe, and we had a woman or a couple of women dancing in a sari. I had no idea what that meant. It was on the vision board. The next year, we got an invitation to go teach leadership in Nepal. Women in saris. Where the
Yeah.
heck did that come from?
Yeah.
That was not a strategy, but it was
Some
somewhere
image downloads something.
our intuition brought us that. And
And I remember whether it was the same vision board or another one, I put an airplane down at once. And that is when we started traveling like crazy,
traveling the world.
doing
Yeah.
our program,
Yeah.
in person and traveling anywhere. So, what's weird about all that is I think we tap more into the sort of the universal energy space, and spirit somehow gives us something that often we're not even aware of, and that gets put somewhere. And then we look back and we went like, oh yeah, well, that's
Of
really
course.
what happened.
Of course. I want to say one more thing and then maybe we'll wrap up. But I think the other thing in terms of how we run our business, that is a little weird. And this might actually be advice. This might come into the realm of advice
This
for
is
everybody.
a cat toy. Do you want to
So
know?
we are completely uninterested in doing anything, especially anything major, that isn't fun. And we have a beautiful friend and a generous, wonderful friend who's masterful in marketing, and he did some planning for us. And we looked at it and we just said, but it's not fun. And what I know about myself, and maybe this is part of the benefit of age, is what I have learned about myself is I don't want to suffer. I wasn't put here to suffer. I wasn't put here to struggle and effort. If I have to do that, I would rather have less money, frankly, and go sit in my garden because I don't want to do it if it's not fun. And more so than that, I probably won't do it. It's probably the bigger truth. I just won't do it.
Yeah.
And there's lots of things that for other people wouldn't be fun. I can spend hours reading hardcore neuroscience studies and parsing them out and figuring out that might not be fun for someone. It's fun for me. So I'll do it. But I don't want to suffer. I wasn't put here to suffer.
Yeah, no, this is very interesting. And I think this is not weird about us. I think this is also a piece of advice, is that when you're looking for a business partner, make sure that you also have different strengths.
Mm.
your strength of doing the deep neuroscience research. Well, that's not what I do. I mean, I can read a book and I certainly can make sense of it and we can debrief and,
Oh yeah.
create and, I don't mind that. Um, I'm leaning more into, gathering all our little people together and making sure they're doing their jobs and,
Yes.
they are celebrated and they are, whatever. Uh, so it's important, that we also recognize we are different with
Yes.
different strength and different approaches, and yet at the same time, there is an intersection where we are completely aligned and alike. And
I
people that have experienced our students, every comment is, "Oh my gosh, you're so different," and then at the same time, it's like,
similar.
and you're not in some
You're
way.
not. We're so aligned in terms of, I think, what I would call awareness, in terms of consciousness, in terms of understanding the values that are really important. We run our business based on values. We're constantly kind of coming back to that. So I'm thinking like the being is so aligned, and the doing, there are different strengths. Ursula is a great people manager. It is not my happy place to manage people, so they don't make me manage people. She doesn't make me manage people
In
because
fact, in
it's
fact,
it's
sometimes
not
it's
my
like,
happy place. It's not my
sometimes, in,
thing.
in fact, sometimes, and so this is again maybe also the weirdness of our relationship. When we have a meeting with all the little people together, I usually often, do a little meeting with and like 5 minutes before and saying, so just context, just so you know, this is what these people like to talk about, and so we need to rein this in a little bit, but just so you know.
I know. I'm trying to be better about that. But yeah. So I love that you say that. It's both I think in finding a business partner, you find someone who is aligned with you in terms of values, in terms of, we have a value in our work about generosity. And Ursula was just sharing an example with me before we started today about a very generous thing she did with one of our students. And I was like, that sounds great. And she said, I knew you wouldn't have a problem with that. So she doesn't need to clear that with me because we're aligned on that value. And I'm not going to say, you did what, and I can come to her and say, here's something I'd like to do that's very generous. And she's like, I think that makes sense. And so that makes it easier and smoother. And then finding different, sort of the being is aligned and the doing, you've got some different strengths so that you can play there. And then we've also gotten smarter over the years and also hired out some of that which neither one of us wants to do, like Yetza doing the taxes.
No, I'm sorry. I mean, I've done, the books like you remember like 15 years ago, 18, 20 years ago. I mean, it was such a struggle.
Not your happy
Every,
place, and it's not
every
mine.
year, every
And
year I would say, how can I make this fun? And it would usually be I need a glass of wine while I'm doing this.
we just waited for Yetza to retire so he
Yeah.
could do it.
Yeah.
But absolutely. So that's the weird business relationship and how Be Above runs. And again, if there's anything that sparks you, take it.
Yeah.
But please know it works for us because of the deep, deep trusting relationship we have developed over 24 years. We met in the fall of 2001. And that's why it works for us. We are not saying this would work with everyone, but if you want to know how Be Above runs, that's how Be Above runs.
Yeah. And also, know that this is not how we started. We learned often the hard way of what is not working, how can we be better in our relationship, how can we do this business better. So maybe that's another one of our values. We are constantly looking at how can we be better?
Yeah,
Can we
yeah,
improve
absolutely.
not only, in the systems, but generally? What are some things that we can bring in that constantly helps us evolve? So,
Mm.
as Anne said, if anything of this is inspiring to you and you go like, oh, it should be fun.
I'm not here to suffer. Hmm.
Oh, the last little story. So I did a group today, and we're going through the 7 levels. And one of the lovely participants says, well, in the description here, it says basic enjoyment of the enterprise. Well, what do you mean by that? And I looked at it and I said, well, basically it's having fun. You know the idea of fun. And I was like, oh.
If we're having fun,
I know,
maybe
it
it's
was so cute.
effective.
It was so cute. Basic
That's
enjoyment of
great.
the enterprise. What does that mean? We have
That's great.
fun. All right. Well,
Thank
thank
you, dear.
you. Thanks, sweetie. Thanks for listening. Take
Thanks,
good care.
everyone.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.